Welcome to the All In podcast with Nate Peo. I am your host, Nate Peo. Today's guest is Amanda Catarzi Hanks. Amanda is a published author, technical writer, public speaker, social worker, NGO consultant, undefeated MMA fighter, anti-sex trafficking specialist, Florida gang expert, skilled VIP fundraiser, and unconventional networker. Tons and tons of titles there. Amanda is an amazing, amazing person with an amazing message. Came across her through social media and first got kind of curious about what she was up to. She was posting about writing legislation regarding the anti-sex trafficking legislation she's working on. And something's always inspiring when people go out of their way to give a voice to people that maybe don't have one, and they're an advocate for those that don't have an advocate. So I had her on the show, and she's got an amazing message. Hope you enjoy. Please, at the end of the show, if you like it, subscribe to the podcast. And if you found value, if you could just tell 2 people about our show and tell them to check it out, that'd be awesome. Anyways, here's Amanda.
Want to go far in business and in life? You can't do it alone. The secret is expanding your network of personal relationships, building friendships, connecting on an intimate level, away from the office, over a coffee or cocktail. Welcome to All In with Nate Peo, the show that asks what happens when you go all in and leverage the power of your network of personal relationships.
Good morning and welcome to the All In podcast with Nate Peo. I am your host, Nate Peo. Today's guest is someone that's super cool, Amanda Catarzi. She is somebody I met through, I believe it was through an Unconventional Leaders Facebook group from Heather Paraday, which is funny. A lot of people I tend to connect with seem to come from that group, but this one wasn't so much as an instantaneous connection, like let's get to know each other. It was more like, hey, we just kind of friended each other on Facebook and then probably some other social media things. And then slowly I started seeing her posts come up in my Instagram feed. And I was like, who is this person? Because on Instagram, she goes by Amanda Cat. So she could have been a fitness person. She could have been a 75 hard person. She could have been somebody I was following for a variety of reasons. I'm like, this person keeps posting. She keeps showing up. She's got some interesting stuff. And then you added another Instagram channel called Amanda Writes, and you started talking about doing you're writing legislation for disadvantaged kids who are specifically related to sex trafficking legislation in Florida. And I was like, this person I want to reach out to. I want to talk to her because I'm an advocate for people that are willing to put their efforts in to have a voice for people that don't necessarily have one, or people who come from different backgrounds than most people do and don't realize, what's available for them. So anybody that's doing that advocacy for it, I'm just like super compelled to find out what they're talking about and see if there's a chance to help. So we got connected on the phone call, and turns out Amanda has just an amazing, amazing resume. She's a published author. She's a technical writer. She's a public speaker, social worker, NGO consultant, undefeated MMA fighter, anti-sex tracking specialist, Florida gang expert, skilled VIP fundraiser, unconventional network, just a few. And you're what? You're in your 20s, right?
I'm 30.
30. So even 30s, damn, that's a lot of stuff to be big resume for a short period of time. So welcome to the show, Amanda.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, appreciate you coming on. So I'm going to ask you, my first question is like, how does one go from becoming an MMA fighter to walking the halls of the state capitol and meeting with senators, meeting with legislators, and writing, helping to craft legislation specifically to a topic I think most people aren't going to be involved with or really know a lot about, which is sex trafficking?
Sure. So I, as a young girl, moved to California to pursue my dreams from Florida to California. And in the midst of that, I started fighting and had a real knack for it, and acquired numerous coaches and was being really successful at that. And in a very quick probably about 6 months, one of my coaches became really abusive towards me, and he began to labor and sex traffic me. So I was fighting for him, and he was taking all the money, saying he was my manager, but I never really even all that money, knew of me quite a bit. And then also the relationship turned from a romantic relationship to an abusive relationship to a relationship where he was forcing me to have sexual interaction with other individual profit. And it happened really quickly. It was really slippery, a lot of psychological roles that he played. So I was totally washed. I was totally caught up in a toxic relationship and really naive. So this was my first adult experience dating. This was my first adult experience living on my own. So things got away from me really quickly. And then fast forward to fighting and being in this lifestyle, which was really violent and really abusive. I got into a car accident the week of Valentine's Day and had sustained severe brain trauma. And that basically ended my fight career. I couldn't get touched in the head anymore because it would result in migraines for days on end. I couldn't finish sentences, things like that. And I still struggle a little bit. I still have a delay every now and then. But after I came out of that, I realized what was happening. I kind of like the veil was lifted. And I'm like, holy cow, like this is happening. And this happened to me. I'm an educated, good home, good childhood, supportive parents, no real hardships growing up in life, not any more than other individuals. And it happened to me. So it could happen to anyone. So that really put me in, acted as a catalyst for me to become an advocate for those who were victims, who did find themselves in these situations, and to also prevent it from happening. So from that point forward, I just started pursuing social work and my own personal health, obviously, mental health, and then social work after that.
So how did you get to start writing legislation? Like, where did you get connected that you would, get involved? Like that's pretty big jump to get involved with. Most people think you gotta, spend a lot of time, go to Harvard, get an MBA, and rub elbows at the country club, and like senators and congressmen. Like, how does one get plugged into that field?
So a lot of my crazy life experiences have come from me just saying yes to things, even though I'm severely underqualified. I feel like for a lot of the places I end up, I go, how in the world did I get here in this room full of NFL players, or, in this room full of congressmen and women? Like, how me, little old me. And it just came from me being like, I can do that. Yes, I'll do that. So my first piece of legislation that got passed, I'm working on another one right now, but my first piece of legislation, I basically kind of just ended. I was working for an anti-sex trafficking organization, and they weren't going fast enough for me. So I just started trying to find the holes in the system. I'm like, okay, well, I'm working with adults that have been sex trafficked, and there's a lot of trauma to undo. There's a whole life you have to rebuild. What if we could start attacking this thing at the root? And we found that about 99% of our victims had their root of their the lifestyle that they were living in their sexual trauma was from childhood sexual trauma.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, if I could identify these red flags at an early stage in a child and teach people how to do that, then maybe we can stop sex trafficking, period. Because it's the second largest illegal enterprise in the U.S. People think it's a foreign issue, but domestic sex trafficking is huge. And in Florida's number 3 in the country for this, and number 2 for minor sex trafficking. I'm like, all right, well, if we can attack this at the root and get funding to this issue, then we could abolish this thing. So I just identified where the gaps were in the system. And then I started taking upon myself to go and meet with all my local people, all my local government people. So I became good friends with the mayor. I started meeting with different city commissioners and just introducing myself, saying, hey, I'm an advocate for this. this would be awesome if you adopted this as one of your agendas. It's bipartisan. It would be fantastic. Like, let me help you an issue to adopt for your campaign. And then I built up a rapport for myself and introduced to a couple different aides for Congressman Cannon. And then I got to meet him a couple times because I just kept saying yes. I just say, taking me everywhere you go. I want to go everywhere the aides go. I want to go to all these meets. I want to go to the junior league club. I want to go and just let me go because I'm really passionate about it. And people find passion really attractive. So when I'm really sold into this, obviously. I'm really passionate about this. And my passion caught your attention.
Yes.
And it definitely caught Congressman Buchanan's attention. So, so the next thing I know, fast forward, I'm getting on a plane to DC for a day. And mind you, this is during government shutdown. So everyone's telling me you shouldn't go. No one's going to be there. Why are you going? This is a complete and total flop. Like, I worked my ass off to try to get meetings with all these different people, just phone calls, cold calling after cold call after cold call, begging these people, give me 5 minutes. And I'm like, I'm still going. I'm not going to not go. Everyone told me not to. I flew up there and everybody was in their office. It was perfect. It was absolutely perfect. So I went up there and just hit office after office and basically organized within a couple hours a meeting between a bunch of different congressmen and women on, both sides of the political spectrum, because it's a bipartisan issue. And if you want to get anything passed, it needs to be bipartisan. And brought them together in a room and said, this could benefit everyone. This is to help children. I know there's funding for this. All I need is a couple million, like, let's go, let's do this. And they all agreed to it. So I got all their word. I laid out for how much money it would save the state, how much it would save the country. And then later we ended up having a couple more meetings to solidify actually all of it. But yeah, it was passed in 2019, I believe in August. So that was really fun.
That's amazing. And I think, the lessons that I see standing out is saying yes to opportunities and always being open-minded. That I think sometimes if we as a person are looking at something and go, what's my return on investment if I do something? And we say, oh, that's maybe not worth my time, or I'm only going to do it if it's this much stuff. But if you just say yes to everything, you never know where it's going to go, what it's going to lead to, what doors are going to open. So when you're open to those opportunities, I think you're going to put yourself in positions where success is more likely to occur than if you just wait for the perfect opportunity or the right person, because everything leads to everything, which kind of goes to your point about networking to get there. It's like you were open to meeting everybody, you were cold calling everybody, and you realized that introductions to people is what's going to take you where it's going to be. And that open-mindedness, all of a sudden you go from just maybe having this idea that you want to get plugged in, you don't know where to go, you don't know how to get started with it. You meet somebody who introduces you to somebody who introduces you to somebody, and next thing you know, you're sitting in the office of a congressman talking about legislation in Washington, D.C. So that's a crazy, crazy story. I think you have another very interesting roundabout networking story with how you got plugged into New Zealand, assisting them with some of their legislation.
Yeah.
Or did I get that wrong?
Let's back this up, because I've always had a super clear vision as to want to make an impact that's lasting. And so at a very young age, I always knew that I wanted to make a huge impact in the world, one that was global. And so I'm like, all right, either I need to be a super billionaire person or I need to be friends with really powerful people. And that was something that was always been in the back. I can't remember, even as a child, that was something that I was really convinced of. I carried a briefcase around me. That's how I carried stuff. I didn't use a purse or a backpack. I carried a briefcase, and I always dressed up in business clothes, as a kid could, because I was always very minded of okay, I'm going to change the world, and this is the plan, and this is the process. So my entire life, every single relationship I look at, as how it's going to change the world.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a 50-50 chance. Either they say yes or they say no. Those are pretty good odds.
Yeah.
It's pretty good odds. Like I'm going to walk into a congressman's office, and he's going to say, get out, or he's going to sit down and listen to me. That's pretty good odds. So why not? You know? And so when I was working for this anti-sex trafficking organization, my CEO mentioned at a Christmas party that she was thinking about expanding nationally. And she's like, do you have any contacts in New Zealand? Because I was known as the contact person, even though I had no contacts at all. I made that reputation for myself because of my consistency. Like I would call people until they picked up. I would email them until they emailed me back. And everyone thought I had this magical networking touch, when it's like not at all. I was just really, really borderline crazy persistent. They're either going to be my best friend or they're going to get a restraining order, one or the two. That's like my mentality. So
how many restraining orders do you have now?
I have 0. They're all my friends.
See, it pays to be persistent, and it pays to like have confidence that people are just like you on the other end, and they want human connection, human interaction. If you're just yourself, you're able to, they might not be on board with your cause, but they're willing to pick up the phone, they're willing to talk to you, they're willing to have a conversation, and that's really all you can ask for.
Well, the beauty with nonprofits is you can spin it. I mean, there is an advantage for everyone, whether it's a personal, spiritual, moral advantage to where I want to give back. For a businessman, you have a major tax write-off. For a congressman, it makes you look good. Like there's always a win when you invest in a nonprofit. So there's a lot of money to be made in nonprofits, and there's a lot of money to be passed around, and there's a lot of good to be done. So anyone who wants to get involved in nonprofits, it's always a win no matter what. So it's an easy sell. And that's the NGO coach coming out in me. I try to convince everyone to start a nonprofit.
I know. I think our first conversation, you were like, you got to do one. But anyway, so how did picking up the phone get you to New Zealand?
Sorry, getting back on track. Well, my CEO goes, okay, do you have contacts in New Zealand? And I said, yes, I do. I had no contacts in New Zealand, but I knew somebody that might know somebody. And so I had a contact from when I went to school in California. He was really internationally minded. And mind you, I hadn't talked to him in 7-ish years at this point, but I had kept him like in my feed and liked his stuff and commented on his posts. So we were still kind of connected. And I sent him a message, a Hail Mary of, hey, I need access to New Zealand. Who's doing social work in New Zealand? He connected me to a woman named Fiona. She ended connecting me to the chief of police, who was David. And New Zealand only has one police force. They don't have like multiple. They just have one. So when I got connected to David, that was the money connection. And we ended up talking. And then next thing I know, I have meetings with the New Zealand government. Jacinda, who is the prime minister, was going to meet with us, but she had her baby the same week. And people were like, how in the world did you get these meetings? Nobody meets with these heads of state. Nobody meets with the director of the police department. And I'm like, I just called and I just asked, and people got on board. So it was kind of wild because it was a major bluff and it was a major Hail Mary, but like, what was the worst that could happen? Someone to be like, no, sorry. And then I would just tell them, no, sorry. But I went after it. I wrote a proposal. I listed all their legislation and all of their collateral on their social issues. I studied it, and then I wrote a proposal finding all the gap in their social services and said, this is what needs to change in your laws. This needs to change in your legislation if you want your country successful, because what you're seeing happening in your country are symptoms of these root issues here being seen. And they're just shocked and blown away. And I think it's hard for them to kind of swallow that pill from a American girl telling them. But they've started changes in their legislation that we're going to see major change and this huge ripple effect probably within the next couple of years, which is really exciting.
That's super cool. That's an amazing journey. And you talked about a lot about persistence there. And I think persistence is an important skill to have, because you're going to get told no more than you're going to get told yes with more things. You have to be willing to know, to get out there and just go, I'm just going to start picking up the phone. I'm going to keep calling and keep knocking on doors. I'm going to keep going until I get a yes. And one of the things, I think some people, they don't want to hear no, so they avoid it. They avoid the question. But I'm like an advocate of get to know as fast as you can, because you're not wasting your time. You're not wasting the other person's time. Like, let's just get to a no. If you're a no, then I'm going to move on to somebody that's a yes. And I know that if I hit enough no's, I'm going to get to a yes. And if you're a maybe, then let's talk. Let's see what we can do to get to a yes. But the back and forth, the like avoidance, because you don't want to tell somebody no, like that you should just get right up to the front with that. A lot of times, what I found it with because in my career, I'm a professional buyer, so I'm on the other side of the table a lot of times. I'll tell people right off the bat, like, I'm not going to be doing business with you for XYZ reasons, which is just like, we have established vendors, we have good connections. We don't want to, change a good thing. So if I'm going to, abandon the people that have stood by me and been in my group for a long time, I need a compelling reason to make a change. And that compelling reason isn't just to save a few dollars, but it needs to be of real value. And when I tell people that up front, all of a sudden that pitch, that conversation of trying to convert me goes away, and it becomes a discussion on a more intimate level, more personal level, and we get to know each other. And then those people, there's not this awkward like tension of, is this person going to try to sell me something? And is this person going to tell me no or yes? Like, it's not weird. All of a sudden, it's just like, it's up front, it's straight up, and we're just having a conversation. And those tend to have worked out good for knowing people. There's people that I've had that conversation with and I've still never done business with, and maybe never will, not because of anything that they're doing, but because of like logistics. Or selling in Florida, we buy in California, and there's just not a market there. But once you've had that conversation, that's off the table, this relationship develops, and it's led to other things. So I might not have been able to help them personally, but I can connect them to somebody else that could help them, or they might connect me to somebody that can help them. And I think you probably found that along your path, is that when you're asking people, hey, can you get me plugged into this person? The answer is no, but why don't you talk to that person? And it kind of like leads to different locations. You never know where it's going to go.
You were saying like there's a yes and there's a maybe and there's a no. And I guess in my mind, it's always a yes, even if they say no, because in my head, I'm like, okay, what they're saying no to is right now, this moment. And they're saying no to the way I pitched this. So maybe if I approach them in a different way, they'll say yes. And I've always, like you said, like that, those relationships sometimes develop into something else. So no matter what, it's always a win, even if they say no, because they know who I am. They know what I'm trying to do. And now we have a relationship. So I might circle back to them and be like, hey, so this is something else we're doing. Do you want to become involved in this? Or I would love to see you in this way. Or, hey, can I serve you in this way? So I think a lot of the relationships I built were no's. And then I convinced them otherwise. Yeah. Or I asked them, how can I serve you? Like, instead of me asking for something from you, how can I serve your business? How can your financial planning? Like, what does your financial plan look like? Do you have that set up? Put a couple, nonprofits in there so that you have a legacy, stuff like that, to where it's, all right, a no isn't really a no. A no has to do with the moment and that particular situation. So in my mind, there's a lot more yeses around that no. It's just about finding the right approach.
Yeah, I think, you talked about energy and excitement about something you believe in draws people in and wants them to be around you. And you have this like big personality. You have this like big smile that just says, it's like, well, and this passion for what you're talking about. So it's like, if you get your foot in the door, like I could just see like, okay, you're not going anywhere. But you have this this personality that you're not, even though you're not going anywhere, I don't want you to go anywhere. Like, let's talk about what you got going on, because it's exciting and it's comforting. So I think that's why it's important to kind of consistently bridge relationships, because you never know. I was going to go somewhere else with that, but I totally spaced on what I was thinking about saying. But anyways, it had to
That's
do
kind of funny
with.
because. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, now I recall what I was going to say. I was going to say if you get Amanda calling you on your phone, you see her number coming up, just know like she's not going to say no to you, or she's not going to take no for an answer. So you might as well just kind of take the call and see what she has to say. She's going to wear you down anyways.
Just roll over. Which is really funny because I'm a total introvert, like 100%. And so I hate going to parties. I hated going to all these like junior league meetings and, different political meetings. And I something my dad taught me at a really young age, because we come from a circus family. So we're all performers. My parents met in the circus. That's how my family got to America from Italy. What
kind of performance artists were they?
We did horseback riding. So
okay.
The Loyal Rapensky Troupe is what the name of the company was called, with Ringling Brothers Circus. So my parents met in the circus, whatever. So we come from this really big show family. So I've always been like, hey, like, here I am. But it was always a show. It was never really part of my personality until I found something I was passionate about, and then that connected it for me. But something my dad always taught me was he was always nervous to do public speaking in his position and in life. He was always nervous to go perform. And he's like, you got to find a button. And when you push your button, that's when it's showtime. That's when it's time to put on that hat. And so he would always push his nose, like take his finger and push his nose and go, it's showtime. And so I actually started finding my button and like pushing it whenever I'd walk into a room and I go, it's showtime. And like, it's not about me. It has nothing to do with me. It has everything to do with the cause. And I was so sold into the cause, whatever I was presenting at that moment, that people couldn't help but get engaged as well. So it's kind of funny because you're like, oh, you're confident and you've got this big personality. It's like, really, I'm total opposite.
Yeah.
I'm extremely introverted. I'm really quiet, but when I become passionate about something and when it's time to go to work, it's time to go to work.
Yeah.
And there's nothing that's going to divert me from that course at all.
And I think that's an important thing, because I'm in the same boat as you. I feel like I'm very introverted. When I was growing up as a kid, I would avoid social gatherings. Like, and I'm talking like real young. Like, I remember being at the mall when I was probably in like 5th or 6th grade and saw some kids from school, but I was with my parents. So I avoided them because I like didn't want them to see me, and I was like embarrassed to be around them. And it just kind of like progressed through life. And of course, we don't really need to get into it on this discussion, but that led to coping mechanisms of using alcohol to lubricate social stigmas and stuff like this, and be the person who you think you want to be in social circumstances, but it's not really, maybe it helps you at first, but then it becomes a crutch and it's holding you back from being your true self. But I totally get that, where you go into something and you want to be on. And for me, and sometimes it's like finding your voice. Like you have this idea, how are people supposed to act when they go to a networking thing? How are they supposed to interact with people? How am I supposed to present something? And if you kind of realize like everybody's unique and everybody's different, you just got to find what works for you. So it's like, if it's the way you tell your story or the way you're passionate about something, like you just need to, like you said, flip that switch and go, it's on time. And for me, it's kind of like a game. It's maybe not acting like somebody I'm not, but it's turning on a side of me that's just like, okay, you're normally at a 5. We need you at an 8 or 9 or 10. And you just go in there. And then like when you're done and you leave, you go, oh my God, what the heck just happened? Like that was crazy. I can't believe I said some of the things I said or did, but you just kind of like roll with it. And the more you do it, the more confidence you get. And the more you figure out who you are, it becomes easier and easier. And like you said, I people that are exciting attract the people to them. You know, like if you're at an event and you're the gregarious person, you're the one laughing, you're the one chatting and engaging people, and you got one or two people, everybody else is looking at, who's that person? I want to know who the life of the party is. And you start attracting more and more people. So sometimes, like for me, if I'm at a networking event and I don't know anybody, I'll just try to grab somebody else. And usually they're all there to meet people anyway. So it's not like it's weird if you say, hey, I'm Nate, I'm so-and-so from here. Or I like to, find something on somebody's clothing that they wore that you could compliment on, because they know that they probably put a lot of effort. So like, hey, I love your watch. You got really cool shoes, and get a conversation going, and then try to draw somebody else in right off the bat and be like, okay, now we're three. And I'm introducing, I don't know you and I don't know you and you guys don't know anybody, but like, hey, did you know this person? And then all of a sudden there's this conversation talking, and it's not like you're waiting for that awkward pause to pass. Yeah. So I think it's really about finding your voice. You got a ton of stories that turn into these lessons about networking. I didn't really mean for the whole conversation just really get on to like lessons in networking, but it's defined the path, like of you taking your experiences, the thing that you're passionate about, the cause, and going, I don't know where to begin. I have no idea how to get plugged in, but I'm just going to go in places where the people that I think I need to meet are going to be. And you're going to meet somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody who knows the right person you need to meet. And if you're just kind of open to that, it's going to work every single time. And the more often you do that, the more chances of it happening sooner and quicker. So that's why people go, you're at the right place at the right time. Well, the only way you're at the right place at the right time, if you're at the right places all the times, waiting for the right time to happen. So exactly. I think that's an amazing...
making that time. Yes. Because like, it's not necessarily about networking or any of that. It's about finding your cause and finding what you want to shift in the world and giving yourself so much to that. So like when I walk into a networking place, or when I walk into, a club in DC to try to meet some congressmen and women, it's not about, okay, I got to sell this, or I got to connect, or I gotta be this, or I gotta be that. It's like, how can I serve these individuals? And I'm so focused on how I'm going to serve these people. And I'm so sold into my vision and my goals that I can see the connection, and all I got to do is serve you until you see the connection as well. And then we all benefit from it. So like, that takes a lot of pressure off of me having to perform or having to say this or having to be that. It's because it's not about me. It's about me serving you. And I'm going to make you look like a genius. And I'm going to bring so much value to my life, to your life, that you can't say no. So it's kind of funny when you talked about at working place, you start introducing people to people, because whenever the congressman comes, I always end up showing up wherever he's at. And I always end up meeting people in the room first. I spend about the first 15 minutes, like you said, meeting people. And then I start bringing people up to the congressman and introducing him to the congressman, because I think you're going to be valuable to the congressman. And so he actually at one point thought I worked for him. And I was like, no, I don't work for you.
You should have told him that. Then you could just get on, on his travel entourage, or just be like getting in the limo, getting on the plane, be like, who is this person? So she works for you. Yeah.
He was like, now, like, what's your role on our team? And I'm like, I'm not. But we've written legislation together, and you know who I am. And he's like, oh yeah. And I'm like, and I want to meet with you to talk about. And then I'd start rolling out my personal plans and goals after I've met their needs and served them, and they recognize my value. That's when that door opens for you to say, this is what I want, and this is what I need from you now that I've met your needs. Yeah. So, and it's just really strategic. A lot of people think, oh, that's selfish, or, oh, you have a underlying goal. It's like, no, it's called being strategic and efficient. And if I meet their needs first, of course they're going to want to meet mine. So it's having that servant mindset moving forward. And so that's something that's always been instilled in me ever since I was a kid. And it's my driving force for sure in everything I do.
And I think that what also helps you is that the cause is more important. It's bigger than you. Like
100%.
You're working with children, you're working with adults that come from different, all kinds of, like you said, you came from a fairly normal background and couldn't believe you got, into that lifestyle, and nobody knows what they're going to come across or what they're going to rise up against. So to have this passion for something that's bigger than you personally, that's a cause for helping others, that makes it more like, when the times get tough, you're going to keep plugging through because your why is bigger than just fame and fortune. It's really for serving others, to serving the people that you're being an advocate for, serving the people that are going to help you be a bigger advocate, have a bigger platform for your message. So I think that's an amazing story, an amazing example. Now, you're also a writer. I mean, we could probably talk for days. We've covered, I think, 2 of your 28 different titles you've had. But I recently grabbed your book off of Amazon because I wanted to check it out. It came in the mail yesterday, so I haven't had a chance to read through it, but I did flip through it. So I'm excited to see what that's about. And you're currently working on another book, correct?
Yeah. So the first book, I always wanted to be a writer as a kid, and I kind of had like this awakening a couple months ago. I'm like, hey, I've written some stuff, and it was kind of a big deal. And I passed some legislation, and I made some monster proposals that people seem to really like. And like I've got a knack for writing. And that same week, my mom brought over a ton of my stuff that I left at their house. And it was all these childhood journals and childhood notebooks from when I was like 7. And I had been writing stories. I had been writing visions of my future, like visualization, just speaking out what I wanted for my future as a child, and stuff that I'd been studying and kind of learning about the art of visualization and quantum physics and how it all connects. And it was kind of crazy to be like, whoa, I had an intuition as a child that knew all this. And I would write out word for word what I wanted for the future, and was practicing all these things that people are just now becoming more and more aware of. And that's what kind of led me to write the first book, which is Subconsciously Conscious. And that's a workbook that helps people build the skills of quantum physics, learning about quantum physics and the art of visualization and the art of journaling, and how all those together will really help you build the future you wanted, or you want. So that was the first book. And it's I have to really fight insecurity, my imposter syndrome, when people tell me buy it, because I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. So sorry, I will refund you. But I like shut it back down because I stop, because it is like from a really genuine place, and from a place of where I studied behavior. I just want to get the people out so that the other books could follow. And it's basically they journal every single day. So you'll fit a workbook, anything. And then this next book I'm writing, I decided to do a complete 180. And there's someone that I'm connected to. His name's Adam Lawson, and he is a horror movie like freak. Like, he loves horror movies, and his angle is helping people with depression, with suicidal tendencies. A lot of people who have been through trauma really find a lot of solace in watching horror movies, because it makes them feel less ostracized, and that they can relate to the person who's going through the horrible stuff because they've been through horrible stuff. So a lot of people find healing in that. I personally don't, but he has saved so many lives and really ministered to a lot of people from his horror platform. Has a huge following on Instagram. It's called Screams and Mirrors, is Adam Lawson. And so I reached out to him one day because I just felt a prompting in my gut that, hey, you've got a story, you've got a horror story, and you need help pulling it out, and you need someone to write it for you. I'm going to do that for you. So tell me what that story is that you've been thinking of for the past couple months, having no idea. He's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you're messaging me right now. So we're writing a horror novel. So completely different federal legislation. And it's been a blast because we're addressing a lot of mental health issues. We're addressing a lot of people's demons that they fight against. It's going to be really fantastic. I'm able to bring in some of my past experiences and really make it come to life and pull on some of his struggles and his thing he's been through. And I think it's going to be really, really awesome. We're going to fingers crossed going to happen by Halloween. So
awesome.
Really excited about that. Yeah.
Yeah. So that reminded me of really one of the things that I was drawn to when I first started connecting with you was this idea of bringing a voice to people who don't necessarily have a voice or think that they have a voice because they think they're the only one in that situation. So you talked about depression. You talked about abuse. You've talked about being involved with sex trafficking. And for me, I've had problems with depression, anxiety, a relationship with alcohol, and even imposter syndrome. And a lot of times we think about these things internally and we think we're the only one because nobody wants to talk about it. Nobody wants to say, I've been sex trafficked. Nobody wants to say I'm an alcoholic. Nobody wants to say I'm depressed, or especially, a man doesn't want to admit to being depressed or anxiety because there's a lot of, stigmas that have been throughout life. Like if you're a man, then you're weak, or if you're a woman and you've been sex trafficked, then you're, a slut or a whore. And it's like, you don't want to be associated with that. So you keep it quiet, and you don't realize that when you give your story, when you share your story and the stuff you've been through, you're able to relate. Somebody else is going to hear that message and go, I'm not the only one that feels this way. I'm not the only one in this situation. And I don't have to accept it as just, this is how life is. And I can't do anything about it. It gives you a chance to realize, hey, I see somebody else that has been through it before. They've overcome it, and I can too. You can become an inspiration. So I think that just is a testament to your story of just like having this calling to reach out to somebody you've never met before and be like, hey, I'm going to write your story for you. Like that level of confidence, but there is some truth to, having a calling of knowing when people need your help and assistance to do that. A lot of people talk about the law of attraction as maybe being hokey or a joke. But when you look at it in a quantum physics level, there's a guy, I have his book. Maybe I could look it up while we're talking here. Got to find my Audible app. Where's that one at? I can't, there it is. And he talks about why quantum physics and the law of attraction are together. What's his name? It's called Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself by Dr. Joe Dispenza. And it's about quantum physics and how, at a very molecular level, everything just becomes energy. And if everything that you're made out of, I'm made of, the chair you're sitting on, I'm made out of, it's energy. Can the energy communicate, talk with itself? And it does, in the sense of like, he talks about like protons, neurons, and electrons floating around, and you say, well, they could be in multiple places at one time. And it's like, well, how can that be? It's like, well, it's only in this one spot when you focus on it, and then you can measure it. So if you think of energy as always constantly moving, then it's only in one spot when you can focus it down into one thing. So think about like a TV. I try to think of it as like a TV, and you have all these lights, and they're all shining in different places. And you go, okay, how can this make sense? But these lights can be configured in this exact array of blacks, reds, yellows, reds, greens, blues to create a picture of what somebody looks like on the other side of the country. So if that's capable through the use of physics to make that happen, like we can visualize and attract things into our life through focus and intention. Not saying like, hey, I'm thinking I want a donut. A donut's not going to appear in my hand, but you're able to think about what you want and think of solutions to get that. And when you have confidence that you can do things, it becomes easy. So if I imagine I want a donut, it's not absurd for me to think like I could get one if I wanted to. I would say, well, I don't have any money to get some. Well, I can think of solutions that I could get me $1 to go buy a door. I could go through the couch cushions. I could dig through the change drawer. Like I could go walk around and look, maybe somebody dropped a quarter somewhere. Like there's solutions when your mind is open to figuring out stuff. And so you're going to start attracting the solutions into your life to go find what it is you want. And a lot of times when things become, I guess, maybe you don't believe it's possible. Like if you believe it's possible to get a donut, that's very easy to comprehend and do, but maybe like a bigger challenge, like how can I put myself in a position to be a United States congressman? That becomes a little bit more far-fetched, but you start thinking about the same things. Hey, I'm going to think about this. I'm going to visualize this meeting with him. Ideas spawn of like, well, who could I meet that could introduce me to him? And how could I meet that person that could introduce me to them? So everything kind of like feeds off each other. And when you start focusing on the things that you want in life, you become aware of the opportunities around. They probably were already there. You just weren't tuned into them. And because you tune into them, they start becoming like this magical feeling, but it's really just of being aware. And in that book he was talking about, he calls it energy flows where focus goes. So when you focus on what you want, you're going to start directing your energies towards that, and you're going to start bringing into the things into your life. So I didn't mean to get on a tangent of the law of attraction here.
No, I mean, I 100% believe it. Yeah. And the whole New Zealand thing, when I talked about getting connected to New Zealand, prior to my CEO asking me if I had any connections there, I made up a title for myself. And I'm like, what do I actually want to do here? I'm like, oh, I want to be the international relations director. And I literally made myself a title. And then about 30 minutes of my workday, I would dedicate to the tasks that an international relations director would have. And I did things that I thought someone in that position would do. Nobody asked me to do this. I decided this is exactly what I'm going to do. Fast forward, after this whole New Zealand thing, guess what my new title was from my CEO? International Relations Director. And I didn't tell her that. I didn't tell anybody that. I just did it. And when I started visualizing, when I put my focus on what I wanted, I started doing things that I imagined somebody would do in that position. Now it's happening. Now I have that role. Now I'm executing in that role. So exactly what you're talking about, where your focus goes. I heard a story about, I forget his name. He was on Andy Frisella's podcast. He's written a number of books. I think I have his book right over there. But he talked about the point of positivity. And he tells a story about how they all got in, they're all whitewater rafting. And the guide says, hey, the river's really high today, but I need you to focus anywhere where I point. That's where I need you to focus on. Don't look down at the water. Don't look that's the positive point. That's where we're going to go. If you look anywhere else, we're going to fail. But if you look at where I point, that's where we're going to end up going. And he called it the point of positivity. And I probably butchered that, but that was basically the gist of it. And like you said, if you focus everything on there, your body, your hormones, the chemicals in your body, everything lines up to make you successful in whatever you believe to be true. So if I believe it's true that I have a calling on my life, if I believe it's true that that congressman needs to talk to me, if I believe it's true that I'm going to become president in 2028, like, not saying like it'll magically happen, but like you said, opportunities begin to open up because your reticular activating system in your brain is activated. That's all you have eyes for. That's all you're geared towards. And now everything has a ripple effect and responds to that energy. And doors start opening left and right. It's amazing. Kind of like when you want a red truck and you start shopping for red trucks, all of a sudden all you see driving around are red trucks. And you're like, holy cow, did a ton of red trucks just appear in your world? No, you started looking for it. And when you start looking for wins, you're going to find more wins. right? Even the smallest win is going to set this chain reaction of more wins. So when I wake up in the morning and I make coffee, I'm like, man, I get all this goodness in a cup. That's a huge win. And it cost me how much to make? Like a couple of cents. I'm on a winning streak. That's a win. And then when you're looking for those wins, now you're catching all the lights, or you're not catching all the lights. You got all green lights. That's another win. Now I get a phone call from a senator. That's another win. And it just keeps going. When you're looking for the wins, you're going to find more wins. And that's part of that law of attraction, visualization, quantum physics, reticular activating system. And that, like, all those things in my favor, how can I not get to where I'm going? You can't resist it. It's the flow, right? Like, you can't resist the flow.
There's this like momentum that builds. Is like you just, and I'm an advocate of it. When you don't know where you want to begin, you just start thinking of, okay, who do I want to be around? Who do I want to connect with in this thing I'm attracting? So if I want a red truck, I might start thinking, like, I'm not just going to magically get a red truck. It's going to show up in my door. But you start thinking about, okay, well, maybe I'll go on the internet and I'll start looking up red trucks and maybe figure out which kind of red truck I want. And then you start seeing more red trucks. And then you realize somebody with a red truck and they give you a recommendation on the red truck. But then you go, how am I going to get a red truck? You have to go to the places where red trucks are. So you got to go to the dealership and you got to have the conversations with the people. And that's kind of like a real simplistic model of things, but it's really always the same thing. You go to the places where what you're after is more likely to occur. And then because you're in that place, it's like a win, because, if you're looking for red trucks, but you're at the scuba diving store, you're going to get frustrated looking for red trucks because they're not there. They're at the dealership. So you got to go where the stuff is. And because you're there, all of a sudden you go, yeah, I found a red truck. Well, why'd you find a red truck? Because you were in the right spot. You put yourself in a position where the chances of success were more likely to occur. And that's really what I think the law of attraction and the quantum physics behind it is you just, you put yourself in places where it's more likely to occur. You don't wait for things to happen to you, but you start moving in this direction. Sometimes we move slower, sometimes we move faster. So yeah, it's very cool stuff. You got so much to share and such an amazing life story. I feel like we barely scratched the surface. But we're kind of nearing the end of our time here. So is there anything that you would leave for advice to somebody looking to get started, I guess, chasing their passion, chasing their cause? What would you recommend for that person to get started?
I think it's important to first realize what your passion and what your call is, and a lot of people don't know. So finding that bigger yes or that bigger why will make your no's and will make the hard things in life easier to bypass on your way to it. So like I said, I had this innate calling in me. I knew what it was to serve people who were less fortunate. And that's a pretty wide general thing. But as I followed that, like kind of like you're saying about the truck, the details came in. And I was able to kind of narrow. And now it's starting to broaden again, which is kind of fun because I don't know where I'm going to land, but I've done this before. So I'm like, I'm okay with it broadening again because I'm going to land somewhere great, right? So if you don't know what your passion or calling is, I would say start paying attention to things that invoke emotion in you. So if you're watching a movie and you're sobbing your eyes out when you normally don't, pay attention to stuff like that. When you're in a place and you feel anger, or you hear a story like, oh, screw that, shouldn't be treated like that. That's a really good indication of where your calling is and where your passion is. So start paying attention to all those things, because I can guarantee you there's going to be a really reoccurring bane kind of in that. So you've kind of got a kind of a scope of, okay, this is what I'm passionate about. This is what pisses me off. This is what makes me cry. This is what makes me really happy. So I'm going to kind of bring those together and see what comes of that. So after you kind of get that trajectory, like you said, start getting around people that are doing what you want to do. So if it's animal rights people, well, then you should probably start volunteering at a shelter. Or if you want to get involved in writing legislation, you have to know the groundwork for what you want to write. So you need to get involved on a very low level on how to serve that. So like, let's say you're concerned about homeless people, go serve at a homeless shelter. Start talking to the people that have been there 10, 20 years and see what they have to say about the system. Start getting the insider. And now you're in a place to where you've gained 20 years of experience without having to be there 20 years and solve problems. So that's what I'd say. Start on a very micro level. Once you find your passion, then start just going, like you said, to those places to where those issues are being addressed. And that will start leading you to then introduce yourself to the CEO, then introduce yourself to the person running the thing, and then make sure you're around them. Make sure you're serving. Your heart should always be to serve. And that will take you places that you've never been before, never imagined you'd be. Take you to, I went to Myanmar and serving a warlord there in Myanmar, which is Burma. And just because I said yes, and just because I want to serve, servants are in king's courts, right? So if you keep that servant, it's going to lead you to places that you want to go. So yeah, just find your passion, start showing up, and start serving.
I love that. I think you just defined my whole show that I created. This premise was just like finding my voice and going down a path, not knowing where the end would be in sight. And you described it perfectly when you said, if you just go down in a broad sense, the details will fill themselves in. I love how you just simplified that whole thought process into a comprehensible sentence. So I appreciate you for doing that. You've been a amazing resource here for me on this episode. That's great. So amazing, wonderful person. If somebody wants to meet you, get in contact with you, connect with you, where should we send them to get to know you, to find you?
Let's go on Instagram to Amanda C. Writes. Okay,
awesome. Yeah, so check out Amanda C. Writes on Instagram and send her a message, follow her along. She's an amazing, clearly you can see she's got this wonderful story. And I can tell you she's barely scratched the surface of it. I think book 3 will be your amazing life and times of Amanda Cat. So thank you so much for coming on the show. I appreciate it. It's been an awesome experience chatting with you here this morning.
Thank you. It's been super fun. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you.
Make sure to visit our website, therealnatepeo.com, where you can subscribe to the show on iTunes, so you'll never miss an episode of All In. While you're at it, if you found value, we'd appreciate a rating on iTunes, or if simply tell 2 friends about the show. Looking to connect? You can find Nate Peo on LinkedIn or Instagram.